when you said that I shouldn't listen to it's the Greatest Adventures of Slick Rick is the name of the record.
Yes, the
Um,
greatest event.
that it was dirty and not to listen to it around my children or wife. I was like, really? Like this guy, the one that's like saying, "Hey, young world, the world is yours," and like maybe like don't start robbing people because then that'll lead to a bunch of nasty things. That guy is, and yeah, and yeah, he is.
And
I mean,
the first song comes on.
let's
Like,
say he contains multitudes. Yes.
oh, he's a very multifaceted like thinker and person. And
Mhm.
how about this? There are so many personalities on the Greatest Adventures of Slick Rick that the grown-up me has always said the Slick Rick suffer from any borderline personality disorder.
Mhm.
Like, because
Or maybe he's just inventing characters. Like, I mean, either of those things could be true.
I only ask that because of the startling, the startling, tenuous, and quiet nature when he speaks and when he interviews. Like these characters, when you were to, if you were to speak to him, you would never believe that he's the author of these characters. And I'm saying that because I've met him at Manifest in high
Mhm.
school once too. He's actually a very quiet, low key, humble guy.
Yeah.
And so some people, when they have mental health issues, and it's not to say that he does, I know I do, but when you grab the pen, you start creating those things that
Mhm.
exist in your mind that you're not so willing to share
Yeah.
because
It's a way
you're
to
worried
vent them. Sure.
people may look at you.
Right.
So there is some vent in the personalities. I say that for meeting him and having been watching his interviews my whole life because
Mhm.
he's nothing like the characters he portrays.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Huh. And I mean that is true. I'm not necessarily for David Crosby. David Crosby. I mean, we're sort of focusing on him, or will focus on him. But there are four members of the band. But he is one of those guys that strikes me anyway as being that guy, whether he's in a band, whether he's by himself, whether he's just that guy because he is famously like curmudgeonly and grouchy and like I mean he was all of those things in interviews in his personal life in his bands and like all of those things. So it's interesting. That's a an interesting contrast too that um Slick Rick, you're saying, sort of invented characters to portray or to talk about things that needed to be talked about. And Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young did it like the from the other side, I guess. So it's just an interesting contrast.
When you put it that way, yes.
And neither of those things are bad things. It's not um in many ways it seems from what you have said about Slick Rick as like a human being, like in your interaction with him.
He requires things,
Hmm.
but he's a really nice guy and really easy to talk to. Like when I met him, he's like, "Oh, it's like nice to meet you." Da, 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 da. It's like your rap album was the first rap album I ever listened to. He's like, "Oh, he's like, man, thanks for telling me that. Da, da, da. What's your favorite song?" Da, 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 da. Like I
Yeah.
can't make up my mind some days, da, 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 but you know. And
Yeah.
so we'll let you talk to him like that. LL was the same way when I met him. Those guys also come from an era too where it's like they changed rap, quite frankly,
Yeah.
and they changed the money for the people who came after them.
Oh yeah.
LL was a
LL
benefactor.
specifically, yeah.
Yeah, and so you'll find, I hate to say it, you'll find those guys much more humble and easier to speak to. You know, so that's not to say he doesn't have some diva quality to him. He's fucking Slick Rick, but you know,
Everybody on that level would have a little bit, I would
right
imagine.
when you're on that level, there's everybody's got a little kink in them somewhere about something. You don't get that far without being particular.
Yeah.
I think that's what people forget sometimes when it's like, oh, well, such and such is kind of a dick. It's like, were they a dick or were they particular?
And David Crosby is one of the most infamous, let's call him particulars of of music history. Like he is a
He's been
famous he's like Paul Simon level, like prickly kind of.
He's been called a dick by his contemporaries. Yes, he
Yes,
has.
by a lot of different people. Yes, we'll talk more about that in a minute. But I did want, and we've kind of like hinted at this when we talked about his multiple. I hesitate again to, like you said, to use the word multiple personalities because that's a diagnosis that we're obviously not qualified to make. But his multiple
Right.
personas in his that are like or characters, I guess, that he's presenting in his stories.
Well, how about this? So many rappers create multiple characters, but not as well as this guy. When I'm
Yeah.
saying there's something about it that strikes me as mental health ish, potentially, And I'm being careful when I'm saying that too. I'm saying that in a complimentary way to how his artistic genius is. And this guy is pulling off these characters better than everybody else. Frighteningly.
At the very least, he's a better actor than everybody.
You gotta, I mean, there's on his comeback album, The Art of Storytelling, there is literally a whole song dedicated to his fetish for anal sex.
And
it's literally
that goes actually some of the way to answering this question too, which is how do we square the person who said, "Hey, young world, the world is yours," with the person who went to prison for shooting somebody for like I mean, and it is very clear that he contains multiple and this is not putting it all in Slick Rick. We all contain multitudes. We all have our good sides and we all have our demons, and we all have those things, right? Like everybody has things that set them off, and everybody has things that sides of them that they would rather not show the world, right? And sides of them that they are more okay with. It's just interesting to see, like, because I looked it up. He was 23, I think, when he released, at least when the album was released. But this is like some wise old head advice, right? This is some wise old man sitting on the stoop talking to the youngins walking by, but he's really not an old person when he's telling this story at all.
Okay, so people have to understand the most, and this is a hip hop thing. I don't know if this is a pop thing, and maybe you can help me with this. Our most socially conscious and impactful albums were mostly written by our artists and our legends before they turned 25 years old.
Yeah.
We're hearing something like Death Certificate by Ice Cube, which is literally like I don't know if anybody's broken down what it means to be a ghetto child in South Central Compton, just that section of the way that Ice Cube does on Death Certificate with the perspective and the analysis, you know?
Okay.
Andrew, he's like 22. When Nas is making Illmatic, he's 17 to 19 years old when he's making that. These dire situations that we're placed in environmentally, they age us in so many ways. And you can hear it in the music, because here's the reality of the matter. It's like, as a grown man now, I go back and listen to some of the stuff that impacted me, and I forget as a kid that those guys were just a few years older than me. They were fucking kids too. Yep. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm going to the words of this 21-year-old when I'm 13. And then but then when I'm 25, I'm thinking like, damn, he was 21 when he said that.
Yep.
What is it in society? Like we have this thing in our society, and hip hop is a purveyor of it. Well, situations force us to grow up real fast.
Right.
And some of the personalities comes from, I believe, the trauma.
Yeah.
And blues make me want to holler, throw up both my hands.
Yep. God, I love that song.
Oh, that's one of the best songs ever written and ever made.
Amen. That's if I were forced to name the single best song that's ever been done, I wouldn't. That would be one of the ones I would consider for sure.
No, that's up there. Yeah, no, Inner City Blues is all the way up there for me too. It's definitely in my top 10. It might be higher.
Like I haven't gone through the list and thought about it for serious in a long time, but that's definitely one of those songs that's just like you can that Marvin's voice is just and how it delivers that is just
in the melody.
But it goes back to what you were saying, that these kids, I mean, I don't want to call Slick Rick a kid, he's older than us, but like a kid when he's making these songs and has grown up more and faster than a lot of people in the wider world. Honestly, I would say most, not that people don't form bands younger, but you usually see the sweet spot of musicianship like that where they take off between 25 and 30 usually. Like that's the and I mean Crosby for example was like 28 I think when Deja Vu, this album, the Teacher Children, I mean he had been in the Byrds before and a bunch of other stuff too, but this album that has the song we are going to cover today, he was 28, so or 29 maybe.
No, and I just want to say something societally, and then we can flip because of what we go through in inner city environments. there is a familial process of rushing us out the home too. Because here's the thing, because we're living in dire circumstances, well, our parents don't want us staying there longer than they have to. So there's a rush for the parents to grow us up and get us off to college too. And when I mean it's real, I'm going to tell you what I mean. And you know me, well, I moved in this area so that my daughter could be a normal child.
Right.
Do you know how many black women, Andrew? Listen to what I'm saying. Do you know how many black women have told me that my daughter needs to mature some more or needs to grow up some more? And they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They're just traumatized and scarred. You understand what I'm saying? Like, we do that even in our mind in the black community. The rhetoric is very, very adult about removing her from the environment. I be telling motherfuckers, I'm like, no, she's
a child.
Right. She's a child. She's fine. The only problem with my 15-year-old versus your 15-year-old is that my 15-year-old is 15 and your 15-year-old is 25. That's not my fucking problem. You shouldn't have grown your child up.
Yeah.
My kid can stay here till she's fucking 25 because, well, not being funny, that's what white people do to make sure that their kids are successful if need be.
Stay close. Yep.
Stay close as long as you need to. And so there are some problems in the black community. And this is that inner city angst that I'm talking about, that when you put it into a musical form and you give it to the kids, well, it's bad for our community, but it's part of what makes the music so great. And that's some of the conflict there. It's like, oh, no.
Holler. Yep.
For my kid, but it's wonderful for the music. You're going to get a Hey Young World. You're going to get an Inner City Blues. But you're also going to get black women who have been traumatized and scarred by it trying to tell me I need to grow my kid up when they need to grow up.
Hey y'all, thanks for making it to the end of the video. Make sure to click like and subscribe to our channel and come back here later in the week. Right here, I'm going to put the full episode that this clip comes from on Friday. So come back and check that out. We'll see you next time.